G'day Australia, g'day Belconnen! A beautiful part of Canberra, of course, with the ACT. We are in for a big night tonight here, the Southern Cross Club in Jamison in particular. Thank you so much for joining us in the room, joining us on telly. Let's learn a little more about our national capital and, of course, this bit of it, Belconnen. Now, for those that have lived here a long time or been visiting a long time, there was a time before the lake went in. Well, roughly about 50 years ago, that's about the same time as Belconnen, joined the family of suburbs that are in and around our nation's capital. Tonight, we are going to have a look at some of the pretty obvious things to come and see and do here, including this being a political show and a political channel. How do we not spend a fair amount of time at Old Parliament House, which also doubles now as the Museum of Australian Democracy? The people were fantastic, showing us around. The facility is exactly as you imagine it to be. And even if it's something that you came and did maybe year 5 or a long time ago, you've got to come back and actually have a look at what they've done specifically with that building, but everything from the National Film and Sound Archive, where I was able to work out this program is officially in the record. So when they somehow dig up the ruins after climate change, they will find one little file left. What were things like back in 2015? Oh, fat bloke with a beard was on the TV. Okay. But no, we're there in the history, all right? Now, also, another chapter you may well have heard in the past couple of days, of course, Prime Minister and President. And let's be really honest, okay? And you know how big a fan I am of the Trumpster and not of the Prime Minister. I don't think Trump has any idea who the Prime Minister is, and definitely doesn't know who Kevin Rudd is, right? So trying to pretend that he's up, he's down, he's in, he's out, there's a little more worth talking about that today. And Kamala Harris, of course, the one who perhaps the Prime Minister would have dreamt of meeting more than, of course, the President of the United States. Guess what? She's going to run again in 4 years' time. But first, before we get to the joys of Belconnen and beautiful Canberra, let us have a look at some of the day's news, including Airbus Albo is up and away yet again. Now, of course, these are important, vital meetings for our country. And for anyone who ever says he goes on too many of them, shame on you. Like, how dare you say that, of course, when the President had no idea who he or the ambassador was when it comes to the United States last week? How dare you mention that the media played along and didn't tell us where his overseas holiday was for a week before that? How dare you say, when discussing Airbus Albo, that this Prime Minister is enjoying plenty overseas when he doesn't do much here, including speaking to an empty room at the United Nations, a personal favourite of mine. Airbus Albo, of course, just this year. Remember when he spent 17 of 30 days out of the country? Well, of course, he had to bring booze to meetings with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom at his place, because, Barry McKenzie, 21st century, what a great look. How dare you say this man travels too much? He had to see pandas in China. This man is a busy beaver. This man had to address the Labor conference in the United Kingdom. He had to wear the wrong shirt at the Pacific Island Forum. He had to go to Papua New Guinea, where we are going to build $100 million renovation to the Papua New Guinean Parliament. Of course, we're also paying for a football team up there in the next little while. So anyone who says this overseas stuff isn't vital to the people of the suburbs of Australia, then you, my friends, of course, as always, are part of the problem. The latest of these, of course, is up and away again, off to Malaysia, where he's going to be at Gibberfest, that I don't know why it's any different than the other 500 that he's had this year. South Korea after that. But interestingly, perhaps there is a little sign about how cocky the Prime Minister is, knowing how secured in the job he is after the federal election and after a compliant media says, of course, for security reasons. We want to say a detail of where you were in your secret Micronesian holiday, as opposed to every moment of what was happening with previous Prime Ministers overseas. We turn to that far right-wing section of the far right-wing newspaper, The Financial Review, and the Rear Window section that's noticed the Prime Minister's now, got so many, tickets to on himself that he can give a few away to a Taylor Swift concert, but he's still able to remain very confident in himself. Why? Because he's doing something most Prime Ministers don't do. In fact, let me follow the bouncing ball here. Albanese seems hyper-attuned to what things look like. And so for some time now, he has been whinging to the travelling media about their insistence on filming him getting on and off the plane. I mean, this is tough stuff for the Prime Minister, right? These are commonly known as arrival and departure shots. Now, let's be honest, the reason people do this is because there might be a Joe Biden falling up the stairs moment, but still, you know, free flight, you're going around the world. OK, here he is walking in, walking off. Now, we've heard that on the past 3 trips, the Prime Minister has complained about having to wear a suit while getting on and off the taxpayer-funded plane to the pandas, to the UK Prime Minister's office, and now, yet again, off to meeting with Asian leaders. And he's asked the media, why can't they just use file footage? Well, as you see here, missed the chance for the Prime Minister to slip arse over tit? No, thank you. Again, that language is in the Financial Review. I mean, how downgrade has that got? Swearing in a newspaper, goodness me. Because having landed on Thursday following his line flight home from Washington, guess what? He was wearing a T-shirt and he went, bugger it, I'm still going to wear the T-shirt when I come off the plane because wearing the suit just pisses me off. Perhaps we should start the No Kings rallies here in Australia. This man is very comfortable, going all around the world, doing it on your dollar, representing everyone here, there and everywhere, and just getting rid of the inconvenience of wearing a suit while he gets on and off Toto 1. Now, so I stand by the Airbus Albo line here, despite the fact that apparently he does not care for it, doesn't think it's true, doesn't think that it rubs well with normal people. Well, again, he has turned up in Malaysia, as I mentioned tonight. He was actually there after Donald Trump turned up in Malaysia tonight. And unlike Donald Trump, there was no dancing from our Prime Minister. This was the Trumpster in Malaysia. Jeff, can you take a wide shot of the audience here? Give me some Trump dancing, everyone. Show me how you do it. Show me, do you do a little Trumpy? All right, that's good, excellent. Good to see. Notice my mum wasn't moving at all in the front row there. Fair enough. Somebody who's never met me was participating. The one who's known me my whole life goes, I'm not doing that, son. I love you, Mum. Always with us on In Our Town. Now, also talking about the Prime Minister, and just, I mean, it is frustrating for him. The media is so unfair to him, right? Now, as I told you, media relationship during the election campaign was giving him the free pass. The hunt was on for all things to do with disaster. And, of course, the result of the election went the way that it did. The media, of course, last week were just acting more like stenographers for the greatest Prime Minister of all time with their descriptions of how successful the meeting was with the man who I still believe does not know who he is, certainly who Rudd is. But, again, you remember the media.
The Prime Minister ready to go face-to-face with Donald Trump.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Donald Trump.
For the Prime Minister Albanese.
A warm welcome to our Prime Minister in Washington.
A triumph. Well, this media, that as we know, when they want to get into a process story of who knew what and when, they become Canberra Columbos. They can pick up the magnifying glass and follow up and down the halls to find out who knew what and when. But this is the very same media who, remember, agreed to say nothing about what the Prime Minister was doing on his holiday for 7 days. Now, again, do I give a stuff as whether he was on holidays or not? No. But the idea that for national security reasons we didn't know anything about the trip, bullshit. It was just because you don't want to displease the dear leader. Well, today, news stories started to appear about exactly what was happening during his week away. Pictures of this and pictures of that. Isn't that a perfect example of how it works? Do not displease the machine, and the machine will toss you a few crumbs. You put the crumbs in the right combination, you will continue getting the crumbs from the Prime Minister's office. But interestingly, that only thing that was memorable of the back and forth in Washington last week was, of course, the former Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, and I know this room's very supportive of him as the ambassador to the United States, and we all know what happens. Boom, boom. Well, we've after the first moment and then him all being forgiven, Trump in the past couple of days was asked, and again now says that he's not forgetting because, again, he doesn't know who these people are, right? So he has 2 settings, right? There's the love setting or there's the ass-kicking setting, right? And you either fall into one of these or the other, which meant, yet again, we are still talking about this as many days after, and I'm starting a new week of shows talking about what we talked about last week.
I think he said a long time ago something bad. Yeah. You know, when they say bad about me, I don't forget.
Now, when the Prime Minister was asked about the awkward exchange inside the meeting and the President still changing his position, dare I say each way elbowing, his position about Kevin Rudd, this was the Prime Minister blaming the media.
Do you need to sub Kevin Rudd out?
No. Frankly, it says more about the journo than it does who asked the question than anything else. I was in the room. It was fine.
Now, don't you like the way that this works? Now, again, we're taking fun, we're taking the piss, we're having some fun. But I believe there should be a relatively adversarial relationship between those who cover something and those who are doing the reporting. Why? Because they are the people who are the only people who can look our leaders in the eye and call BS each and every day. But when unlimited overseas travel is only ever a triumph, when you stay quiet about the holiday in exchange for the ongoing access from the media, when you don't ask the one question that may well embarrass the Prime Minister because it is one on the minds of millions of Australians, that's how access works. Now, this is not the first Prime Minister to invent it, but he's certainly probably the best of this century at perfecting it. And people know that you don't want to upset the machine. On bigger and wider issues, this is why I've talked about that triangle of dependence, right? How you end up with, well, hang on, how does Victoria keep sending the same people back all the time? Because you work for the government, you are dependent on the government when it comes to the handout, or if you're in private sector, your biggest customer is the government. Perfect example there. And rather than turning around and saying, hang on, the issue is not the question, the issue is that there was the information there for the question to be asked. And of course, Andrew Connell is big enough to stand up on his own 2 feet, but I thought a little example worth showing you about what it is like to even tinsy-wincy rock the boat and about how they punish you. All right, let's get on to celebrating Belconnen and making our way around our nation's capital. This is a magnificent part of Australia. Again, it's been around since the 1960s, as was the beginnings of things like the lake, which was officially locked off on at that particular time. Up and down the highway, you can see where we are, where you go north, you go to Yass. Unsurprisingly, you can drive a long way through the night when it comes to Melbourne. There's lots of fun things to do while you are here each and every time. Also, the makeup of the suburb, worth having a look at as well here, about the average ages, that about 100,000 people live here. 36 is the average age, and if not born in Australia, most likely in this suburb, likely to have a connection back to China. Now, again, just down the road is Capitol Hill and is the old Parliament House. Now, this is a building you may well have seen as a kid, but it's one you must go back to as an adult. And one of the biggest bits in history to ever happen in that building is the subject of our next documentary here on Sky News. And our mate Chris Yulman will be here to talk about it. In the meantime, a little more about a building of which you think you may know everything about.
What a day it's been in Canberra. Except for the most hardened of political journalists, it's been a mind-bending experience.
And on the steps of Parliament House, a sacked Gough Whitlam responds to a proclamation.
Gough Whitlam mobbed on the steps of Old Parliament House.
We'll get to all of that in a second. We all know Old Parliament House. 50 years ago, believe it or not, this year since the dismissal. But one part of Old Parliament House that you probably haven't seen is the space I'm in right now, this beautiful garden, a quiet space where members of the House on their side or senators on this side were able to meet away from the public. This was where the informal business of the Parliament could be done. It's a place you normally don't see on a school tour, so I wanted to show it to you before the more traditional parts, which have got one heck of an upgrade over the past few years, as Old Parliament House has now become the Museum of Democracy, and our mate Sam is going to show us around.
And welcome to our House of Representatives chamber.
So Prime Ministers, Menzies, Hawke, last one in here.
The trajectory of the country was forged in this room, and that's something that shouldn't be forgotten as you enter this space. You know, the laws that we live by today came from right in here.
As a politics nerd, my spidey senses are going,
Ben Chifley, one of our most famous prime ministers in the post-war era, he was concerned that the media wasn't giving the Parliament a fair shake. So in 1946, you'll see at the back of the chamber, we've got the ABC broadcasting booth, which was installed.
Wow.
And the intention behind the ABC broadcasting booth was that you would then have some entity within this Parliament which could actually record word for word what was being said. and transmitted to the people in real time.
Now, Sam, I haven't seen this office chair at Officeworks. A one of one.
This was quite literally sent over to Australia almost like what you get from IKEA in a flat pack. It is a replica of the Speaker's chair in the House of Commons in Great Britain, and it really exemplifies the ties that we have to Great Britain. The Prime Minister's office is one of the newer rooms inside of this building. It serviced the last 3 Prime Ministers who worked here, Gough Whitlam, Malcolm Fraser and Bob Hawke. It's got all of the important objects as Prime Minister that you need, a cigar box, an ashtray and a telephone, which would have been able to dial any member of the administration. We have here the word-for-word retelling of everything that took place inside of our Senate chamber for the years that this building was in operation, including our Senate estimates as well, between 1927 and 88, all recorded in these books here.
How long did it take to get the smoke smell out of this building? Because from 1927...
I can imagine a very, very long time.
These were originally white walls. Have a look at this. Our very own copy of the Crown Jewels.
This is St Edward's crown, the coronation crown, which is placed on the monarch's head during their coronation. The reason we have these crown jewels displayed here in this room is because in this space here, as part of the President of the Senate suite, the Queen would have stayed when she came to open up the Parliament in the Senate chamber.
So actual royalty, this room?
This room. We would have gotten ready for going into the Senate chamber.
You just dropped an information bomb on my head that I did not know, which was that this building was never meant to still be standing.
Yes, exactly right. This building, when it was officially opened in 1927, the architect had a very strict budget of £200,000 or around $23 million. And so when this building was designed, given that budget constraint, it was always supposed to be temporary. And so this was a glorified demountable, I'd like to say.
I don't remember my school demountables being this good. Thank you very much, Sam, for that beautiful tour inside, but of course, the history-making moment, the one that we are 50 years celebrating in just a few days' time, this exact spot, these stairs.
Looking out onto a crowd of thousands of people massing here at the front of Parliament House, the moment that the Whitlam government was dismissed from power, the 11th of November 1975.
Well, may we say, God save the Queen. Because nothing will save the Governor-General.
But it's also a reminder, and in all the seriousness of the next few weeks as we remember it, that even when this titanic moment of Australian political history was taking place, someone was taking the piss.
Oh, look, it's a bit too serious for that.
It certainly is. Oh, no, I quite agree. It certainly is. It's extremely serious.
I do just love that this very significant moment has taken the piss in it. Keep your applause going from my mate Chris Ullman as well, of course, part of the family here at Sky News. Lovely to see you, sir. Now, you've got a documentary coming up about that very day. Looking forward to it, but I want to talk about Canberra first, right? You're a bloke who's worked here, lived here. How have you seen it change over the years, or is it just more buildings around the same amount of roundabouts?
Yeah, you could say that. Well, look, the first time we came here was in 1964. My dad was in the army. We moved every 2 years. So 64 to 66 we were here. Last time it snowed in Canberra in 1966, I remember it. I was there, we made a snowman. Then the city finished at O'Connor. Now, people who don't know Canberra would know Belconnen was really just being built at that stage. The lake had only just gone up. So the city's changed remarkably in that time. And look, there are a lot of faults with Canberra, but what I always say to people is without Canberra, there would be no Australia. We will not federate unless there is a choice between Sydney and Melbourne. They could not decide. They settled on the fact that they'd have to have a different city. and that is this one. So if you love your nation, then this is part of the nation. This is the heart of the nation where our democracy beats. Whether you like the government or dislike the government, 100%. This is where it all happens.
So again, for me, as a sort of, I agree completely.
Yeah.
Is that,
and by the way, you send them all here. They don't live here. They come from your electorates.
That's true.
And we only have a few of them.
That's a good point. But also, like, I remember as a super nerd, right, when I was in year 5 and had the chance to come and do the excursion like everyone else, I was the type of super nerd who was very aware of where the flag should be and what means this and why this embassy, that. And what I love about going back into that building this weekend is, again, those reminders about the cathedrals of democracy that are here, that, yes, often we're blown away by the personalities or we get too fired up about the issues. But the idea that in the precinct you can look one way and that's the War Memorial and then that's the High Court and that's the art precincts, there's a very definite sense of the importance of those institutions, not just a collection of them being in the place that we've decided to be the capital.
Yeah, all of the elements of our democracy come here. The judicial system, the parliamentary system, and of course our government system. Old Parliament House is a great monument in this city. But again, I remember it was boarded up for years. Like, we are pretty bad sometimes at preserving our history. It's great that the Museum of Australian Democracy is there and that we do have school kids going through there and that they're learning about how their system of government works. And when you add it all up, and again, we have our arguments about who we would rather be in government, and they get quite passionate. But one of the things I'll say about that Whitlam dismissal, I was a 15-year-old schoolboy. We'd come back to Canberra in 1971. This would be Dad's last posting. I remember the day that happened. The school cleared out, showing my journalistic impulse. I thought, where will I go? I didn't think, I'm in Canberra, I'll go to Parliament House. And I went home, watched it on television.
Well, it was better on TV.
But I was certain there would be violence. But in the great tradition of Australian democracy, there was no violence. Bob Hawke had a big hand in the fact that there was no violence. He told people to be calm. He did not want a national strike. And the fact that we have a constitutional crisis where a Prime Minister is dismissed and our greatest satirist is standing on the steps with him on that day. Only in Australia does a constitutional crisis come with a punchline.
Yeah, 100%. Well said, well said, well said. I mean, also about the building, right? And obviously I'll pivot to the doco. But what I love about the building, I think it's really important, and I was thinking about this a lot this weekend, is that because our modern history is a couple of hundred years, we don't spend a lot of time talking about the importance of the buildings. We talk about what's happened in them. As opposed to when you go to some wonderful church on the other side of the world, you don't talk about what happened in it. You talk about the building, right? I love that in Old Parliament House there is wood from every state. I love that because there wasn't a significant timber industry from South Australia. The granite is from South Australia. That building in particular, and yes, there's another story about what's up, is about that concept of being one.
And you know, Paul, it's small and it's intimate and it says something about a way that Australia was then. I had the privilege once of sitting next to Dame Patty Menzies at a dinner, and I said, I have to ask you this question because Menzies and Chifley were really very good friends. I said, I got told this story years ago about the fact that the Prime Minister's phone number, so on the desk of the Prime Minister, his direct line was 1 digit different to the butchers at Manuka. and on occasions, women would ring up, Chifley would answer and say, this is Mrs. Smith, I want 6 sausages, 2 chops, and apparently Chifley would write it down and then ring the butcher.
And then ring the butcher! Wow! That's awesome.
Now, she said, it still sounds too good to be true.
I don't care. It's a great story.
Dame Patty Menzies told me that was true.
That is a great story. Now, and so when you have the effort, have all of the resources and your free hand to tell the story of the dismissal of Gough Whitlam, about everything that leads up to it, from Joe changing the parliamentary affiliations of people that end up into the Senate, to the who said what, did what, all the rest of it. Give you the chance to report on daily events, but now to be able to sit back and look at something as complicated as this through the lens of time. What's that experience like for you?
It's great. And look, the other thing too is Sky is doing this because Sky is serious about politics too. And we're not taking a political side in this documentary. We are telling what is absolutely a cracking yarn in Australian politics. In 1972, it was time, but it was only just time. Whitlam doesn't win by that many. And he inherits an old Senate. And then, in fact, the Premier of New South Wales and the Premier of Queensland changed the affiliation of people in that Senate. There is an election again in 1974. Whitlam wins by even fewer numbers. And Snedden gets rolled and Fraser comes in. It's the clash. It is a very Australian story, the clash of 3 extraordinary personalities, 2 giant men, Fraser and Whitlam, physically giant men, rhetorically giant men. And then there's, of course, Sir John Kerr. And when Whitlam appointed Kerr, he didn't realise that he had the one person in the country who was an absolute expert on the constitutional dismissal of, well, in this case, a Premier. He had studied what had happened to the Premier in New South Wales, Jack Lang, who got dismissed. And so he knew that stuff inside out, and he always thought he might need to use those powers. So that's in the back of his mind from the time that Whitlam appoints him as Governor-General. So it is a great story. And of course, Whitlam brings an enormous amount on himself. Like, you know, they were hopeless on the economy. They were racked by different sets of scandals. Like the Attorney-General raided ASIO. Try and get your head around that.
Crazy.
So that's a great yarn too. And then we have this Pakistani loan stealer, Kemlani, trying to raise $4 billion worth of money to buy back the Australian resources industry. Like, you couldn't make this stuff up.
It's crazy. It's a great documentary, obviously up very soon here. On the 11th exactly, or are we moving
on the 11th,
in a couple of
yes.
days? OK. Now, you'll be able to see it with Chris. Inside, this is a conversation with an old member of the Sky family, but a radio journalist at the time, Lee Hatcher, about the experience of being there. This is part of what you'll see in the documentary.
He burst through the door and said, excuse the language, "Shit, Goff's sacked." And we took off down to King's Hall, where people would usually saunter and calmly kind of whisper the latest political gossip. On this day, people were shouting, people were running, and we got confirmation that it was right.
So what was it like when Goff came through those doors?
Oh, well, there were hundreds of people out here who'd spontaneously arrived from all around Canberra because they'd heard that this thing had happened. So I had to be there. So there were people all over the place here.
So vital that the people that were active participants, or obviously even the active participant observing through Lee. But good stuff to see. Anything else inside the doco that you want to hook us into?
No, mate, it's just a cracking yarn. It tells the story, which is unique in Australia's political history, of the dismissal of a Prime Minister by the Queen's representative in Australia. Palace had nothing to do with it. It was all down to the three players here.
Good stuff. You can see it on the 11th of November here on Sky News. And Chris, again, just to tell you about how lovely a bloke he is, as soon as he sits down, he says, "I feel bad that I've got my back to the audience." So see, he was thinking about you the whole time. Thank you, great man. Do appreciate that. Chris Hillman. You can see him, of course, with Peter again tomorrow here on Sky News. Quick break, back with more.